It is a combination of issues, all issues of which the CEOs know. So this is not new information to them in terms of what's driving this concern about the long-term viability. It's the combination of all these factors coming together and the economic implications of that. So let's bring it to life for you. While it's 40% around the world, it actually has great variability depending where you are in the world. China, for example, is almost 70%. It's driven primarily by a concern about energy costs and the transformation they have to go through as they think the next decade coming off of coal. If you're sitting in Brazil, it's actually much less. Why? Because the technology has not transformed businesses down there that much. Cost of labor is cheaper, price of technology much higher. They know they're going to have to pay that piper at some point in time from a technology spend perspective, which will have economic implications to it. So the nuances, region by region, country to country, very important to dissect. And how do I manage through that with economic viability? And will my customers pay the prices?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So there's a lot of variability in the reasons that they're giving at this point. But the other headline, which we mentioned in the read here, this 75% number, I mean, again, 73% number. Again, that's a very big headline-grabbing figure. To what extent do you think that reflects a decision-making process subsequently that means jobs are going to go, costs are going to be cut, businesses are going to reshape and downsize?
The 73% number on the pessimism on the economy is actually the highest since 2008 and 2009. The difference in 2008 and 2009, no one saw it coming, and no one could figure out how long it was going to last and how do I manage through that. So a lot more uncertainty. Thereby, in 2008 and 2009, the CEOs had much less confidence they can manage their way through it. This year, they're actually more confident in their own ability to manage their way through this stuff. Now, what are they doing? Absolutely cutting cost. What's interesting is 60% of the CEOs have said, I'm not going to reduce headcount. Now, why is that? 70% of the CEOs have said, my attrition level over the next year or two is going to remain the same of what I've seen the past couple of years, even with a slowing economy, which comes back to this point of, has the power relevant to employee mobility gone back to the employers in a slowing economy where people are searching for jobs? Those with skills, the answer is no. So you're going to still have to pay wages, benefits, and upskill those people to keep them entertained. So they're going to have to find cost savings, redeploy them back into people, and redeploy them into diversifying your businesses.
Bob, I don't want to turn this back at the consultancies, but has there been a collective failure of PwC plus your peers in the industry to prepare companies for this? You're paid vast amount of fees to prepare people for what's called a cycle. Now, obviously, the central banks got rid of the cycle for a certain amount of time, but it was always going to come back with a vengeance, however it came back. And I don't want to be critical of the consultancies, but you're there and paid a vast amount of money to prepare these companies. If 40% of them don't feel prepared to be able to survive another year, that's a failure.
Yeah, so first, let's talk about the 40%, right? It's over the next 10 years. I don't think it's a failure of the consulting organizations. It's actually the question of how do they execute and get the outcomes they're looking for. Right. So one of the things that we have been focusing on relevant to our strategy is how do I actually focus on trust and the sustained outcomes that companies are trying to achieve? Because what's happening, and you guys have seen this and you report on this, I do an M&A deal, I don't get the ROI that I'm looking for. I do a large spend on technology transformation, and I spend a ton of money trying to put in a new system. I don't get the ROI and the better information from that. So how do we actually turn the execution into real results that's financially beneficial and societally beneficial as well, as we think about climate, social issues, and other aspects like that? That's where the challenge is. And that's where the other data points coming through the CEO survey is how equipped are the senior leadership teams to drive in this environment? And that's where you probably have seen a little bit of a pendulum swing. Last year, we had too much confidence in the CEOs. This year, it's swung the entirety on the other side. The question is, how are their management teams able to manage through the uncertainty, the stress, and navigate through the gray zones?
I'm going to ask you a different kind of question, and this is about China. And there's a headline this morning, many headlines about China this morning, but one of them that caught my eye was that you don't feel confident enough to remain the auditor of Evergrande as well. Is there a huge problem still in actually mark-to-market the value of Chinese property companies? And if so, are we anywhere near reaching a trough in this crisis in China?
Yeah, I can't comment specifically on the client matter, but let's step back and talk about China specifically. It's been interesting to see the swings. I talked about the CEO swings relevant to optimism versus pessimism. You've got the swings in China now relevant to what President Xi and the country did a couple of years ago, tightening up the market relevant to monetary policy, now coming back and say, I've got a problem in the real estate market. I've got a problem with my domestic agenda. So you're going to see these swings, which is going to cause concern in terms of which companies are viable in that organization and in that country right now, and particularly the financial services sector, the technology sector, and the real estate sector are the ones that are going to be most problematic or on watch in terms of, okay, where is the viability of those organizations? Coming back to China, you actually see them much more concerned and relevant to what I'll call the pessimism on the economy, but actually more optimistic on the domestic agenda and their ability to actually grow in China. It's not surprising based upon they're coming out of COVID, so they feel good it's opening up a little bit more so. A lot of policies actually incenting more economic behavior, and the world's watching to say not only what's happening in China domestically, but what will China now do globally? Because they used to do Belt and Road. They used to have a lot of investment around the world. The question is that going to sustain itself?
All right, there's many more questions. We'll have to leave it for another day, Bob. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you very much indeed for your time, and we'll catch up on another occasion. Bob Moritz, the chairman of PwC.